To the break room, classic film fans, it's tea time for a coffee break.
Can you get Cab Calloway on it?
Can you get it?
That's my pantywaist sugar.
I'm shocked. Gambling is going on in here.
By the way, how is your father?
Hidey ho.
But I want to know, does it bother you?
And I have my makeshift coffee table here. Welcome back to the coffee house, and gather around the coffee table as we enter our last full week of Summer Under the Stars recommends. Natalie Wood, Olivia de Havilland, George Raft, Anne Shirley, Laurence Olivier, Claudette Colbert, and Paul Henreid. This year's spotlight on Natalie is a treasure. And for me, it's a treasure because of two films in particular. This Property is Condemned, 1966, and Love with the Proper Stranger, 1963. One film is responsible for me getting what other people saw in Steve McQueen, sending me on an official filmography film watch challenge. You know how it is. Watching his filmography from beginning to end in as much chronological order as I could. Love with a Proper Stranger. The other, because I knew what people saw in Robert Redford, because I am one of them. This film was a recommend to me from a friend of mine who knew my fangirl crush on Redford and both of our admiration on Natalie Wood. This Property is Condemned. Did a triple take when I saw it was coming up within a week or so of finding out about it. Set a reminder, watched it, and Broma Seltzer later with a box of what just happened, and Scout, thank you, began sharing it out loud myself. Yes, To Kill a Mockingbird's Mary Badham gives us this tale as it will be told tomorrow, 5 p.m. Central Time, followed by Love with a Proper Stranger, 9:15 p.m. Central Time. Sunday, August 23rd, on what would have been Betty Davis's Day, will be paid tribute to Dame Olivia de Havilland, who not only celebrated a birthday last month, July 1st, at 104, she passed away later last month, July 26th. I know she was 104, but to wake to that news was no less saddening to see. I think there's a part of us that see an eternal lifespan on this side of the earth that physically doesn't exist. And then part of us who delighted in knowing she was still here when we would watch her films or hear her name. And for me, as I stated then, she filled the screen, in my opinion, in any role I've seen her in. And hearing Robert Osborne talking warmly and sincerely about his friendship with Dame de Havilland at lunch during my guest programming segment at TCM of their weekly Sunday conversations over the phone was one of the first stories I shared as soon as I came home. From then, I could not separate the stories from Olivia de Havilland when I see her in a film. I think I will continue to hear those stories from now on, particularly during her 24-hour salute, beginning with The Male Animal, 1942. Picking The Male Animal specifically for my recommend because it stuck with me so much and made such an imprint. When I was writing my weekly scripts for the original Old Time Radio inspired shows, I would record and post to my YouTube channel for fun with my friends once a week. The webisode Take Me Out to the Football Game was the script I wrote, entirely influenced by de Havilland, Henry Fonda, and Jack Carson in The Male Animal. My fave, George Raft. Leave your nasty comments in the trash. From this chosen lineup, I would pick They Drive by Night, 1940, or Each Dawn I Die, 1939, purely because I watch them on a repeat basis on the regular anyway, but instead recommending to you guys Invisible Stripe. It's one of my early film memories, and seeing a young William Holden opposite a younger Humphrey Bogart, pre-Sabrina, brings a smile to my face as if you're visiting old friends, which I literally did this morning. Tuesday, August 25th, Anne Shirley. Was happy to see her name in the lineup. As much as I enjoy heavy hitters and household names, it's days such as this that make classic film fans. My pick, Anne of Green Gables, 1934. Not only because the Anne of Green Gables story and adapts were a part of my childhood growing up, the novel, written by Lucy Maud Montgomery, to the miniseries adapts on screen, and the Anne of Green Gables animated series. but because it's also the character Anne Shirley portrayed in the 1934 film prior to becoming her name change from Dawn O'Day to Anne Shirley. Much like other star characters' name change like Gig Young, born in 1918 as Dawn Evelyn Paris, what a name! Acting as early as 1922 with her film debut, Anne Shirley would retire from acting at only 26 years old in 1944 with No Stranger to Noirettes, the film noir Murder My Sweet, which you can catch 12 a.m. Central Time. Sir Laurence Olivier, making this one quick, simple, and to the point, The Divorce of Lady X, 1938, co-starring Merle Oberon. Admittedly, I can't say it's a fave of mine. However, I always find this an opportunity for Wuthering Heights fans to catch Heathcliff and Kathy in a film outside the moors, in a contemporary film a year prior to Wuthering Heights. Day 27, Claudette Colbert, and the reason behind this week's Fashion Friday. I have to pick two. Because they're showing a noir that I think slips through the cracks. The Secret Fury, 1950, 9:30 a.m. Central Time, co-starring Robert Ryan and I Love Lucy alumni, wait for it, Ethel Mertz, being very unethical, Vivian Vance. My official Claudette pick, The Egg and I, 1947, co-starring Fred MacMurray in their 6th of 7 films together, and the first film to feature the soon-to-be film series I grew up on, thanks to my dad, Ma and Pa Kettle. Last day of the week, Paula Henreid, Le Sigh, Between Two Worlds, 1944. Trust me, an all-star cast, an all-star character cast, an all-star story. Based on the 1923 play Outward Bound, adapted to screen in 1930, then starring Leslie Howard, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., and Helen Chandler, with the title of the same name. Don't miss this one. Watch or DVR, but don't miss it. Okay, I'm setting my coffee down. We know what happens here. Welcome to Fashion Friday. This particular garment may look familiar, as we have seen it in my workroom on the garment rack when I pulled a few pieces from my wardrobe closet to showcase to you guys briefly a few of my favorite pieces. This particular piece, ribbon wrap. I had my sticky note so I can go right to it. I told you guys I did all by hand. I do a lot of pieces that way, usually pieces that require more attention, more detail, where the only way to accomplish it is to do handwork, tedious handwork, which for me, with creating anything, tedious works to my advantage. I really can't put it into words, but the more tedious the task, the smoother the result for me. I think it's because this is where I put my film and music to use, where I'm looping them on repeat, and probably what's responsible for me learning everyone's dialogue from beginning to end, the whole film through, and lyrics to my favorite songs and musicals, because there have been cases where something has been shown in the background for a whole course of the day. Ask anyone who has come over while I'm working and they will tell you true. I have had more people leave quicker that way. This piece, to my eye, has a very Adrian influence to it, though it was not a direct inspiration. When seeing one of my favorite Adrian pieces worn by Claudette Colbert, my mind went instantly to ribbon wrap. Minus the fringe, the layer effect was noticed. I've talked Adrian before, and as much as I love so many other classic Hollywood designers, from Irene to Edith Head, Helen Rose to William Trevilla, Adrian is special. Opening his own fashion house where he'd served most major studios after leaving MGM in 1941, he'd earlier become chief costume designer for the Dream Factory, MGM, after designing several Valentino and DeMille productions. Up on his leave of MGM, fashion costume designer Irene, whom we have discussed in full detail some Fashion Fridays ago during my Irene week at the coffee house, would succeed Adrian at MGM. Adrian was probably the first designer I began connecting a garment film wardrobe with a name. You see his gown, you know it's him. a major inspiration for me, which I am going to inspire my way out of here as we wrap up this week's Cinema Coffee Fashion Friday. And I will hopefully see you guys back here next week with a short list to round out the last few days of Summer Under the Stars as I talk about one of my absolute favorite films of all time. I'm already beaming with a new Cinema Coffee write-up I will be sharing on his Summer Under the Stars day, Monsieur Alain Delon in La Samurai. Until then, be sure to share the coffee house out loud, share it on your social media pages, ring the bell, and be safe, be well, stay healthy, stay home. And I'll see you next week. À bientôt.
Can you get Cab Calloway on it?
Des assiettes sont des assiettes.
That's my patty waist
Des
sugar.
hommes sont des hommes.
That gambling is going on in here.
By the way, how is your father?
But I want to know, does it bother you?